In this video, we will create this simple blog page we see over here on the right. I've already linked the style sheet and set up the head with the appropriate title right here. So all we need to do is the body. All right. So you can see at the top of the page is a header with the title Simple Blog. So we'll just keep this to be an H1 and we'll call this Simple Blog. All right, now below that, there are two blog posts, and notice that both of those blog posts are contained in a box, and that's to say they're styled with a border. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is make a div, and I'm going to give it a class name. And if both of these blog posts can have the same class because they're styled the same, so using VS Code, it has Emmet support. So if I just do div dot and I just name the class, let's just call it post container and hit tab, it'll go ahead and just make that div with the appropriate syntax below. So now in this div, we see a blog post number 1, a reflection, 2 paragraphs, another header, and an unordered list. So let's go ahead and get all that in there. So H2, I'll just call that blog post number 1. Oh, number 1. And then there's going to be a header 3 that is a reflection. And then there's a paragraph of lorem ipsum text. So one quick way to do this using Emmet, we can go ahead and say there's a paragraph, and inside that, I'm going to go ahead and generate some lorem. So do that, and it goes and generates that for me. The second one is italicized. So what I'm going to do is do a paragraph, but inside that paragraph, I'm going to go ahead and put an emphasis tag, and then I'll go ahead and generate the lorem. So you can see that has the appropriate styling. There's another header 3 that has learnings in it. And then below that, there is an unordered list. And inside that unordered list, there is a list item. And inside that list item, there is an anchor tag. I'm not going to have that anchor tag point anywhere, so it'll then just be HTML. And there's another one that says CSS. So you can see that really gets our blog post number 1 pretty set up. Let's go ahead and do the second blog post. So again, it is going to be a div with the same class name as above. That is to say it's going to be called post container. And inside there, this is just a little simpler of a post. So there is a header 2 that says blog post number 2. Then there is the header 3, which says reflection. Then there is a paragraph that just says this post is simpler. And then there is an ordered list this time with a list item, and it says how to count. This was a little attempt at a joke because this is an ordered list. Okay. And then because you learned how to count, you would then say yay. All right, and then after that div, there is the newsletter. So that has the same heading 3 as the reflection and the learnings. So we'll just call this newsletter. And it might actually, I mean, it's not relevant here, but I'll go ahead and show you something that you could do with Emmet here in a moment. So let's get this out of the way. So there's the newsletter. Then a paragraph that says sign up for my newsletter. Then there is a form. That form does not have any actions. We haven't learned about actions yet. And that form has, you could go ahead and provide a label, although you could just simply do something inline like this. No, we'll do it properly. With proper syntax. So there is a label in there, and it's going to be for email, and it's going to say email. That just helps for accessibility reasons. As you write larger websites that'll be in production, you'll want to have that. Then there is an input, and that input is type text, and you need a couple things here. So you do need to give it it's good to go ahead and give it a name. We'll just call it email, and then we'll go ahead and give it Oh, we already did the ID. So now let's give it a name. So that gives it an email. That's for the 4. And we also need a placeholder called email. And then we do want an email right there, semicolon. And then the last thing we need is an input that is a button. So again, you may also have just done the button tag. You could have also done that. So like I said, you could have also done like button. And then inside that, you could just also say register. You can see that those give you the same behavior right down there. All right. Okay. Now, it's technically probably good to have all of this right here wrapped in its own container. So if you're using pretty much any modern IDE, there's typically like a command palette, which is just Control Shift P on Windows. And then under Emmet, I can wrap with abbreviation. And then I'll go ahead and do div, and we'll call this one form container. So this would just, it's good to start thinking about things in terms of containers. So if you want to style a certain part right there, that's good. So this one didn't have any styling, but that is worthwhile thinking about. All right, so the markup of this page is all done now. So let's go ahead and do the CSS. One other thing that I'm going to do before I get to the CSS is, if you look, there's this larger L right here. That L is twice as large of the text around it. So I'm going to need to use an inline element. Namely, I'll go ahead and use, let's go ahead and find that correct spot. It's this one right here. I'm going to go ahead and wrap that L in a span tag. So I'll go ahead and wrap this in a span. I'm going to go ahead and give it a class of, I'll call it just class of big letter. And the reason that I'm using a class instead of an ID is, well, yes, IDs have to be unique, but in the context of like the blog, maybe I want to start different blog posts with this large L. So I want to be able to reuse it. So that's why I'm using class. One other thing to keep in mind about classes is, like, when they're similar styling, go ahead and you can reuse classes. This is the point where we're reusing classes. So this post container is going to be used on both of the blog posts. So you could say like div 1 and div 2, but they're going to have the exact same CSS. So there's no point in doing 2 different classes when they really want all blog posts to have that same styling. So with the markup out of the way, let's go ahead and start styling this. I'll do this from the top down. So again, there's multiple ways to go ahead and do this. So the header 1 has to be unique. So I'm going to target that element. And then let's see what it needs to do. A bunch of things. Well, let's go ahead and adjust the background color. So the background color needs to be red. The color of the font needs to be white. There's a border top and border bottom that are black. So there's a border top, and that is going to be a 10 pixel solid black border. And that same thing will be with border bottom. A couple other things we need to do that takes care of kind of the look of it. We need to go ahead and align the text in the center. It is a sans serif font. So let's go ahead and change the font family. And again, you can just use any specific sans serif. I'm going to go ahead and choose this one recommended right here. A couple other things to notice that there's this extra space above. So what I need to go ahead and do is remove the margin. So I need to go ahead and make a margin 0px. So that brings that back to the top. Then there is some padding in there. And that padding is going to be 10, I think it was 12. I've been using 12 pixels. So if I do 12 pixels on the, that'll do the top and the bottom. And technically there's no pixels on the left or this would put 12 pixels padding on the right and the left as well, but you just don't see that because it's centered. So I'll just use that single one. The font right here is, I think it looks a little different, but it's just because of the size difference right there. You could mess around with font styling and things if you want to do there. So there was a lot of styling there. All right, let's go ahead and target the divs now. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, let's bring this up. I want to target each blog post. So we call that post container. And I want to go ahead and put a red box around it. So the border around it is going to be a 2-pixel solid red border. So that also introduces a couple other things. So you can see right here, there's some, because we removed the margin, that's now right up against Simplblog. So I need to go ahead and add a margin. What I'm going to go ahead and do is add a margin. And I'm going to go ahead and have 10 pixels, but you can see that squeezes in. So now you can go ahead and put 0 pixels, and that makes sure that there's no left or right. So the other thing you could have done is you could have done margin, something like margin top 12 pixels, and then you could have also done margin bottom 12 pixels. That would also give you a similar behavior, but I think this is a little more succinct. So that's the box model is margin, then there's the border, and then there's the padding. I remember that as MacBook Pro. I don't know, just how I remember it, but MBP. So we do need to adjust the padding now, and the padding is just going to be 12 pixels all the way around. So that gets us right here. Oh, we also have this image to deal with. So this image, let's go ahead and we need to put that in. So we don't want that. Let's go ahead and put that probably right below the blog post. You have some options on where you could do this. So we're going to put the image and the source. Let me go ahead and find the source over here on the side. Okay, so there's the source. Alt, I'm going to just call this thinking face. That would be good for like screen readers. So let's go ahead and target this image. And again, you may want to give it a class, but let's go ahead and just think about this simply. So let's target the image. A is too big, so I'm going to go ahead and make the height 50 pixels. You could also have done that as an attribute on the tag, but I'm just doing it here. The aspect ratio is stays the same because by default the width is auto. So it essentially kept the aspect ratio. So again, you could also change that 100 pixels. You could see would blur it, or stretch it. So we'll just leave it there. We want that off to the right. So we need to float that over to the right, and you can see it's still a little bit too low. So you maybe think, okay, we need to move the bottom up. So maybe we do the bottom and we move up 50 pixels, and you're like, oh, that doesn't do anything. Because if you want to move things around, you do need to make sure you're using position relative instead of the default positioning. So again, you could tweak that to get it to match. It looks pretty close there. But that completes blog post number 1. If we look at it, that actually might complete everything. Let's take a look. Oh, we still need to do this L right here. So let's go ahead and target that L. So it's a class, so we'll target and we call that big letter. And what we need to go ahead and do is we need to make the font size bigger. And it is twice as large as the text around it. So what we'll go ahead and use is an ephemeral unit. So we'll use 2em, and that makes it twice as large. So that actually completes the blog post right there. Hopefully you found this video insightful. Good luck, keep learning, and have a great day.